Working in the mental health field is a very noble thing to commit your life to. It's a high-stress career where you may interface with trauma victims, aggressive and violent behaviors, people battling with suicide, child abuse, sexual abuse, death and dying, substance abuse, domestic violence, and so much more. So, if you are thinking of becoming a therapist, or you are new to being a therapist, this message is for you.
You're listening to Mind Manners, hosted by licensed psychotherapist Albert Nguyen. Albert helps his clients overcome past trauma, change their mindset, and accelerate their personal and professional development. This podcast covers a wide range of mental health and self-development topics, with each episode offering an actionable step towards a better you. If you're on a wellness journey, keep listening.
Becoming a therapist is no joke. Every time I meet someone who is in this field or choosing to be in this field, I'm always curious to know why. Because this career path is considered one of the most demanding jobs with the highest burnout rates. Some research states that 75% of social workers and mental health workers experience burnout. That's 75%. And honestly, I don't know anyone going into this field for money. And if you are, you won't last. Starting out, the pay is very low, while workload and stress is extremely high. I know this from personal experience, so whatever your reason is, I'm sure it's deep and personal. It is for me. It has to be. This job is a commitment to the greater good. You're taking on a monumental responsibility here, and with great responsibilities requires great power. In fact, I know many professionals in this field that don't even see this as a job, but a mission or a calling. We come into this field wanting to help others, feeling compelled that this is our purpose, that this is a calling, because why else are we here taking on this kind of career? We know it's not for money, and it's definitely not for glam and fame. This career path is heart-driven, full of passion, and deep concern for human welfare. So, here we are, diving in and coming face to face with problems after problems, seeing the human condition for what it really is. You witness and are exposed to many faces of pain and suffering, and the deeper you go down that rabbit hole, there's no turning back. You can't unsee what you've seen. And quickly and eventually you'll realize that you can't help everyone. You do your best, but even then, you may struggle with not feeling enough, underqualified, or ill-equipped, facing different levels of self-doubt, insecurities, and the imposter syndrome. You may even take on your patient's traumas and stress. This becomes a daily struggle. Every patient or individual you meet comes with different issues, different stories, different moods, different needs and wants, hopes and aspirations. And all you want to do is to save and help as many of them as you can. You know, you're not alone in this. I've been in the field for 10 years now, and I have met and worked and treated over thousands of people from different age groups and all walks of life. And I've grown so much since I started. And I can say the very best therapists I know are the ones who have been through the fire. Many of us learned the hard way, important lessons from many trials and errors. So in today's session, I want to share a few important insight and wisdom from my personal journey in the past decade, with the hope to not only alleviate some of your worries, but also empower you to make the most of your therapeutic journey as you are out there helping people and saving and changing lives for the better. You see, when I was finding my way as a young psychology student, I was deeply fascinated by the mind and its ability to adapt to challenges. The concept that caught my attention early on was self-actualization. The idea that we all have this innate tendencies and ability to reach our higher levels of potential within ourselves. It made a lot of sense to me, especially when looking at developmental psychology, where as kids, when we learn to walk, talk, move, and hit those developmental milestones, we gain certain levels of mastery and confidence in order to become self-sufficient and independent and adaptive human beings. And as adults, we are much more in control of our growth. And we can decide and choose what will become our personal milestones. We can evolve or de-evolve, progress or regress, depending on the path we take and the decisions we make every day. Having learned martial arts prior to my psychology studies, I knew the importance of self-mastery. So these two elements, mind and body, combined became the foundation from which I built myself, learning to master them both to become the best version of myself in whatever I choose to do. So with that said, and without further ado, here are 7 lessons in mindset shifts that I want to share with you. Number 1, let go of the idea of perfection. In my lifetime, I've had the opportunity to be around and work with people who are considered the best of the best at what they do. CEOs and elite athletes and champions, Harvard and Stanford experts in mental health. People even considered me as an expert these days as well. And I can tell you, we all still have our insecurities because the imposter syndrome exists at every level. Every time you reach a new level, there's another level. Every time you grow, there will be new areas that you're unqualified for. Your awareness keeps expanding. It's a constant process of learning, renewal, and growth. Every wise person knows and will tell you that the more you learn and grow, the more you are exposed to what you don't know and will realize how little you actually do know. Because you begin to move beyond your old limits. This is the process of humility. The great Albert Einstein once said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." The better you get, the more exposure you get to your own ignorance. And that's a huge difference between a true expert and master and someone who thinks they know everything. This is the wisdom paradox, and actually the sign of a true master or expert. This awareness is power and provides a sense of humbleness that leads us to 1, stop making assumptions, 2, to appreciate that there are not always a definitive answer, and 3, to ask more questions, 4, to challenge the status quo, 5, it also allows us to listen more intently to fully appreciate different points of views. 6, realizing that anyone and everyone is a teacher. And then 7, we understand that the world is not that black and white and that there are a lot of gray areas, making us more appreciative and empathetic towards differences. So what I'm saying is to embrace it and appreciate that your insecurities and experiences of imposter syndrome is part of the pursuit for mastery in anything. It's part of the growing pains. So trust that when you're experiencing it, that you are exactly where you need to be. Insecurities are normal. We're supposed to not know what to do when it's our first time doing it. We're supposed to feel unsure and doubtful about applying a technique we just learned last week. We're supposed to feel nervous about the new patient or family we need to meet and support. All this anxiety is a sign that we care. We care about being our best. We care about providing good service. We care about doing things right. I would be worried if you weren't feeling insecure or nervous or have some worry. But you know what? It's all in our heads, the thoughts that we think of. It doesn't have to dictate what we end up doing. Everyone has insecurities. Even the people you think are successful have insecurities. A reminder: failure and mistakes does not make you inadequate or incompetent. It makes you human. So the faster you can accept this, the faster you can flourish and learn from the trials and error of actually doing something. This is the process of mastery. A good quote from Thomas Edison that goes something like this: "I haven't failed 1,000 times, but I discovered 1,000 ways that won't work." So don't be afraid to try. You will grow faster the faster you try, even if that attempt was less than ideal. Like Tom Bilyeu often says, experience and failure in particular is the most data-rich information source you will ever encounter during your time on this earth. Don't waste time with embarrassment or shame or self-judgment. Just find the lessons. Failure is a small price to pay for wisdom. Lesson number 2. The next thing we need to talk about is codependency as therapists. We all got into this field for very deep personal reasons and a genuine desire to help others. This, by nature, puts us in a very codependent state. Codependency involves sacrificing our personal needs to try to meet the needs of others. It's someone who has an extreme focus outside themselves, and our thoughts and actions revolve around other people. Codependency is, I can't be okay if you're not okay. It's a constant need to please others, to make them feel good, and this fear of hurting the other person. A person with codependency often tries to save others from themselves. We go out of our way to help others and sometimes get burnt out and hurt in the process. Codependency is a hot topic these days because many of us are realizing that we suffer from it. And many of us are constantly outsourcing our wellness to things outside of us. I've been there. I've spent hours and hours researching, finding answers, and catering to my patients' every need. I worried about the pain and stress they felt and even had nightmares about them. I felt guilty living my life when they weren't happy. I would experience burnout frequently, only to learn and to be reminded of taking care of the most important person of all, me. When starting out in this field, we're learning where our boundaries begin and where it ends. We learn to do this delicate dance with being helpful and ethical while maintaining our own mental health. I want to be brutally honest with you. Secondhand stress and trauma is a thing. You take on enough and you will experience the pain of others, and helping others will continue to challenge you. But none of that matters if you are not well. You cannot be the therapist you are meant to be if you don't take care of yourself the way you take care of your patients. Your patients and future patients are dependent on your health. So, with all that said, what I really want to bring home for you is this: make self-care mandatory. Make it a practice, not just a reaction to stress and burnout. Self-care should be a prevention of burnout. Get so good at taking care of you and all of your needs. Have a system for it. Actually sit down and plan it. Design a treatment plan for you. Think of it as a program you're developing for mental and overall wellness, and you're the one doing it. Your patients and your work will thank you for it. Lesson number 3. Take on challenging cases early on. This will help you get up the learning curve faster. It also makes everything easier later on. This foundation will nurture a deep sense of courage and wisdom that you can leverage in all the works you do with others. My journey has given me the opportunity to work with some of the most challenging populations, from people struggling with addiction, the foster care system, child abuse cases, cancer patients. I've even worked with sex offenders and people with criminal history. And I can tell you, without a shadow of doubt, this all expanded my comfort level. my awareness, my empathy, and my ability to provide therapy to others. I can say with confidence now that I have heard or have had almost every type of conversation you can have with a human being. I'm not saying this to be cocky or boastful, but I'm just saying that I'm not easily surprised or shocked. And I think this is comforting to many of my patients because it normalizes and destigmatizes the problems they have that they may feel highly ashamed of. Lesson number 4. The most important skill and weapon of choice for every therapist will always be empathy. I don't care how good you get with other interventions, build on your empathy skills. This is a skill that requires a lifelong commitment because it's the single most powerful weapon you have as a therapist. I don't care what modality you know and are trained in or what interventions you know. Without empathy, they are almost useless. Most studies suggest that rapport is key to treatment success, and I can confirm this from experience. Empathy is the thing that changes the cookie-cutting interventions in making the therapeutic process for each individual highly personable and unique to them. It's the thing that addresses the deepest need of what many desire when coming to therapy, and that's to be seen and heard, and to be understood and to be accepted. To build rapport requires empathy. Empathy has been and will always be my weapon of choice while engaging in any form of intervention. There will be many times, by the way, especially early on in your career, when you meet a person with problems you've never treated before and may not really know how yet. Always resort to empathy. The goal of empathy is to form a warm, compassionate relationship with each person without always trying to rescue them. I have found that this level of presence is sometimes enough to be helpful. As Brené Brown says, empathy has no script. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting and communicating that incredibly healing message of you're not alone. Empathy is connection. It's the ladder out of the shame hole. Lesson number 5. Other than empathy, the other important skill is mindfulness. Mindfulness is another pillar of becoming a great therapist. And when I say mindfulness, I'm talking about the level of presence and availability you provide to each person you treat in therapy. I often refer to my work in therapy as the most mindful moments of my days. It requires me to be extremely present and grounded in the here and now. I am often described by others as super calm and collected, and patients have been surprised by how calm I can be, even in the presence of people who are crying hysterically or someone who's extremely agitated and in crisis. Let me tell you a quick story. I was working with a young man for several months who struggled with depression and anxiety. We developed a very good working relationship, and I remember one day in particular, he came into my office extremely upset about something that just happened that day. I checked in with him and asked a couple of questions, and he shouted out and firmly said to me, "If you ask me another question, I'm going to take that pencil from your hand and stab you in the neck with it." And I believed him. This was the first time he said anything violent towards me. However, I didn't react. I remember taking a deep breath and I took a moment, observed what was happening, held that space with him, and addressed the emotion behind the agitation. My point here is that I've been in many crisis situations and conducted many crisis interventions where people are either suicidal or homicidal. And I wouldn't be able to do those things without practicing a level of mindfulness. In fact, mindfulness and being aware is vital in learning self-defense. I know this because I've taught self-defense classes. So to be the best therapist that you can be, or even just to be the best human being that you can be, you need to be present and practice mindful awareness of where you are in the moment, what's happening for you, what's coming up, and learning to be a keen observer of your experiences internally and externally. By doing this, you can leverage so much in therapy and in life. Some things mindfulness allows you to do are emotional regulation. We know that mindfulness helps us regulate our emotions and keep us grounded and calm, even in the face of challenge or perceived threats. It allows you to master and practice calmness. And remember, calmness is not the absence of anxiety or nervousness. It's the ability to be grounded and in control even when you feel anxious. Mindfulness allows you to be the designated driver, not the emotion that you may be feeling in that moment. This not only allows you to operate from a much clearer mind, but also helps you think with a bit more objectivity, which is something you would need because, as you know from my example, people do and will get triggered in therapy. As a side note, don't be afraid to challenge and trigger your patients a bit. I call these gentle nudges. Sometimes you will piss them off unintentionally. We can't be walking on eggshells with every single person. The best way to know them is to trigger them a bit. Also, you can use those moments as learning opportunities to practice and model the important skill of conflict resolution. I call these moments also conflict transformation. Strong reactions in therapy are useful because in their personal lives, these things are often avoided. Acting out in session with you gives you the chance to see the struggles in real time and bring it into the room to transform and recorrect the experience with them. Another thing that mindfulness provides you is that it teaches you to accept that you are who you are and you are operating how you were taught to be more self-compassionate, and to stop beating yourself up and rather to cultivate and evolve from a place of self-love and acceptance rather than self-hate and fear and criticism. Mindfulness allows you to be aware of also transference and countertransference in therapy. And this not only allows you to set boundaries, but also to use them in effective ways for treatment and becoming aware of what comes up for you from them and vice versa. You can learn to bring them into the here and now and dissect and understand them in real time. Lesson number 6. Go to therapy. Please go to therapy for yourself, especially early on. In order to be a good therapist, it's important to experience therapy for yourself, whether you think you need it or not. Self-discovery is self-awareness. Learn more about you. I went to therapy for a good 2 to 3 years straight while I was in grad school. Some programs require that you do this. Mine didn't. I went for myself. And going through the process truly gives you a better appreciation from the user experience perspective. I've worked with some amazing experts in the field, and they tell you that your evaluation about the effectiveness of your intervention and therapeutic skills will often be inaccurate. The point is, experiencing how therapy feels for you and getting real-time feedback is highly important and will benefit you greatly during your work in mental health and as you gain wisdom and experience in treating others. Going to therapy is only one proactive way to get to know yourself. Another way to learn more about who you are is to be willing to try new things. Take on new challenges, try different things or different ways of doing things. Think of it as a behavioral experiment. You're trying to learn more about yourself by getting real-time, in-the-moment data. How you react, how you respond, how you actually manage yourself versus what you think you would do. We can all agree that knowledge is useless without application. And the truth is, knowledge is about learning and adding new ways of thinking and looking at things. Wisdom, however, is about removing things, unlearning and refining what you've learned and know. You do this by testing what you've learned, your current knowledge. By doing, you learn what's actually useful and what's not. Lao Tzu said, to attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day. Of course, it's important to have a foundation in knowledge and theories, but they need to be applied and tested and retested. This is how research works. You are your own guinea pig. We all know people who talk a good game, but when it comes down to it, what someone says and does are two very different things. As a therapist, it's important that we actively learn about who we are, our reactions, impulses, and tendencies, so that we know what we can and cannot do, what we can handle, our limitations, so that when you are needed, you are confident about your capabilities in whatever it is that you choose to do, and you have a working knowledge on how to manage yourself when parts of you shows up. I advocate and encourage young therapists to put themselves in challenging new situations as much as possible, so that when it comes to helping someone, nothing that comes up inside of you is too much of a surprise. We don't want it to be a surprise. So what I'm saying is, in addition to doing therapy for yourself, don't wait for challenging situations to happen to you. Seek them out. Find opportunities to practice, to learn, especially if you're interning. See how it feels to manage crisis situations or interventions. See what it feels like to be in the room with a family who's yelling and screaming at each other. One thing I did early on during my journey in mental health is that I made the decision that I would start working with the most challenging and hardest populations first. I had this theory that it will enhance my level of empathy and compassion, but also allowed me to test and expand my limits and tolerance level. And even to this day, this theory and way of thinking continues to benefit me. This was one of the things that helped me the most in becoming the kind of therapist I am today. So remember lesson number 1. Let's let go of perfection. You don't need to know everything or have it all figured out to be helpful and supportive. The process of learning about yourself is for you to be more grounded and centered. Not knowing is part of the journey, and is quite a revelation to admit to. It gives you the opportunity to keep learning and to keep an open mind of curiosity, which ties into empathy. Last lesson for this session that I want to share with you is this. Remember your why and your values. Why you started. Why you're doing this. Revisit it often. It grows with you. There will be days when your hope is hanging by a thread. Because the truth is, we can't save everyone. And some of the cases you take on will challenge you to the core. It will chip away at you. And you can easily lose sight of your purpose in all the chaos and pain and misery. But these are the real moments that you must use to reaffirm your purpose and your why. To remind yourself that this is what you stand for and this is what you fight for. So be clear about what you stand for so that when the going gets tough, and it will, you will not give up. Like Simon Sinek once said, if we want to feel an undying passion for our work, if we want to feel we are contributing to something bigger than ourselves, we all need to know our why. In the end, remember this, your work matters. you never truly know the value of your contribution, because sometimes the things you think are small can save a life. So no matter how big or small, know your why and understand that it is all connected towards something. It counts towards your mission. Let me end this with some final words. Like wine, as you grow in age with this work, you become more and more valuable, and people will consider you as an expert. And while many of us may not enter this field for money, I don't want to delude the fact that we still need to make a living. So, like wine, you not only become more valuable, but your work will be worth more in financial terms. What I'm saying is, your work is valuable and you will be compensated for it. You might not see that at first or come into this field with that mindset. I know I certainly didn't. But as a business owner now, my mindset about money has changed. We can definitely talk more about this, about the business side of things in future sessions. But as a final thought, know your worth and don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. There's nothing wrong with that, and we should not shame ourselves for wanting to make a better living for ourselves as we do this kind of work. Burnout can and will most likely happen to you in this industry. We are deeply connected to what we do. Knowing this, make it mandatory and a priority to build time into your schedule for self-care by making choices that support your overall wellness and work-life balance. We want you energized, balanced, and connected to your work. You are always one step, one decision, one action, one word, and one moment away from making a change in someone's life. Every step you make and take matters. So, as you prioritize self-development, you must prioritize rest and recovery. Because as you grow and reach new levels, there's always going to be another level. Practice what you preach and take care of yourselves as much as you take care of the people you strive to help. Remember to love yourself a bit more and love each other a lot more. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Mind Manners with Albert Nguyen. We hope you found value in this episode. If you'd like to work with Albert one-on-one, visit optimindcounseling.com to learn more about his private practice. Looking to join a community of like-minded individuals? Search Mind Manners Podcast Community on Facebook and join our group to connect with others on their wellness journeys. Finally, if you haven't already done so, please write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and let us know you're enjoying the show.